Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the Sandstorm Non-Corrosive webinar today. My name is Mike Illia. I'm the filter product manager for Netafim, and behind the scenes, I've got Alyssa Luna, my producer, helping out. She'll be monitoring the chat box, and we'll be running a couple polls throughout the webinar. We should be taking anywhere between 20 to 35 minutes, depending on the length of questions that you might have. And I don't anticipate us using the full hour for this. So having said that, if you could, in the chat box, take a few seconds and let us know kind of what part of the country you're from or where you're calling in from, watching from, that'd be great. Just that'll help me understand a little bit more about what the audience looks like. So I'm going to go ahead and get started shortly. So it looks like we have a member of our international team here. Hello, Dror. Excellent. Travis from Arizona. Our Canadian friends, that's perfect. Thank you for participating. So I'm going to go ahead and get started. Today we're going to be talking about a proud new member of the filtration family, the Sand Media Filtration family, Sandstorm Non-Corrosive. And before we get into the details of the non-corrosive filters, I just want to remind the group that's on the call today, that Netafim provides a full range of filtration solutions. Today we're going to be talking about sand media filtration, but we also have a very detailed screen filter product line, disc filtration product line, and we have a line of sand separators. So a couple things when we're talking about filtration, again, before we get to non-corrosive, I just want to remind everybody that our approach at Netafim, when we are recommending filtration products, it's really has to do with the application first. We don't want to just immediately run towards the most inexpensive filter or the most expensive filter. We really want to look at the water quality. We want to understand the chemistry in the water. So a water analysis is always important if we can have that provided to us. And then generally water source, water quality, those kinds of things. In addition to that, it's also just as important to understand what are we protecting with that filter. In other words, is it a drip system? Is it with low flow drippers? Is it a micro system where it's micro sprinklers where the orifices are much bigger? Is it even an impact sprinkler system for frost protection? So that's also very important to understand what we're protecting to. And then in addition, how long is that system being designed for? Is it for a 20, 25-year application, or is it for a 5-year application? So all those things will come into play when we start talking about sizing filters and which filter product or method to use. Okay, so now we're going to kind of dive into the Sandstorm family just a little bit as review. We'll get to non-corrosive here in about 2 slides, but I want to remind the group on the call today that we do have a full range of sand media solutions. So we do have, we'll have 1 slide on single chamber just to review, the double chamber product category, and then we'll dive into non-corrosive. So our single chamber metal media Sandstorm is really I'll say our flagship product in the sand media category currently. We've had amazing adoption across the entire country with this product line. Some of the features of it are it has dual, I'll say dual protection against corrosion and UV. So not only is it baked inside and outside with high grade epoxy, but it also has a phenolic coating to give it even more resistance to rust. All the ports on Sandstorm single chamber are all 9-inch diameter, so very large access ports. There are 5 ports total, an upper port, a lower port, and then around the belly of the tank, there's 3 9-inch ports, kind of equally distributed. So it's really easy to service if you have to inspect the underdrain or service any element inside the tank. You can do it fairly easily, and I've done it many times and without much difficulty. And then in terms of the underdrain itself, you know, with Sandstorm, when they designed Sandstorm, one of the biggest targets for them was to have a very highly uniform and efficient backflushing underdrain. So you'll see in single chamber, the underdrain kind of on the picture on the right, but you'll also see that's a similar design in non-corrosive NC when we get to that point and the picture of the underdrain. So that's very important. Also, we have the leading warranty in the industry for sand media, basically 5 years on our metal products. And then single chamber was designed for really the larger flow applications. So we really start at 30-inch diameter tanks, 36, and then in the bigger systems, 48-inch tanks. And this filter comes with 115 PSI operating pressure, maximum operating pressure. So that is single chamber Sandstorm metal. The next product in the family of Sandstorm would be the double chamber. And the double chamber in the US, we're looking at, it says here 12-inch to 24-inch tanks, but we do carry 16, 20-inch, and 24-inch tanks. And these are really designed for the lower flow irrigation applications, you know, where single chamber wouldn't necessarily apply because of the different size tanks. In addition to that, if we were needing pressures in excess of 115 PSI, then we could go to a double chamber where we can go up to 145 PSI maximum operating. And then some of the same characteristics of single chamber, for example, the high corrosion and UV protection, is equaled here in double chamber, as well as the port sizes, et cetera. So that's Sandstorm double chamber. So let's talk about why we're really here today. What are we really here to learn, and what can I share with you in terms of the new Sandstorm non-corrosive? We're calling it NC for short. And so what is Sandstorm NC? And simply put, it's the culmination of many years of R&D. It is the next generation of our Sandstorm product line, and the 3 major pieces to it are that it's manufactured with the highest quality of resins and non-corrosive materials. It was designed for the harshest of water sources. So in areas where, and there are a lot of areas across the country with bad iron or manganese bacteria problems, this tank was really designed for those types of applications. And then in addition, it was engineered for the most corrosive climate conditions. So in areas close to the coast, any coast, by the way, right? The West Coast, the East Coast, the Gulf of Mexico, the Hawaiian Islands, you know, where, you know, you're in just salty conditions, this tank was really meant to perform in those environments. So here's just a kind of a snapshot of some of the major components on NC. So we have the pressure vessel as you see it there. So there's let me back up 1 second. So this is a picture of a 36-inch tank installation. We have two sizes, which you'll see here in the coming slides, 36-inch and 48-inch tanks. So this is the pressure vessel here. You'll see access ports on the top, access ports, or drain port and access port on the bottom. You'll see we're using the plastic backflush valve, Series 350 Bremont backflush valve, very good backflush valve. And then all the components really are either high density polypropylene or polyethylene. In addition to what I've mentioned, you'll also see that in each one of the tanks, there is actually also a little vacuum protection device. So not only is it super important with these tanks to get the air out of the system at startup, it's probably more important to let air in as the system shuts down, to let air into the system so that we don't have any vacuum damage, basically having the tanks collapse. So that was also worked into the design. Okay, some of the features I'd like to discuss briefly. Whether it's 36-inch or 48-inch tanks, they are corrosion free. What does that mean? It means it comes with a lifetime warranty against corrosion. Okay, there's no metal parts on the interiors of the filters where the water's coming in contact with. Therefore, we're able to do this lifetime anti-corrosion warranty. So what does that also mean? Because there's no metal parts, it means that in these areas where we have iron bacteria or manganese, where we know from experience that we have to use aggressive chemical treatments in order to help clean up the water. Well, these tanks were designed for that, so you won't have any damage to the product because the materials we're using can handle it. Versus if you're trying to go with metal tanks, over time you're going to have degradation and pinholing and that type of thing. The other thing that they did in the design of Sandstorm Non-Corrosive is they made the tank, I don't want to say shorter, but the profile is it sits lower on the pad. Okay, and if you've ever had to inspect a 48-inch tank in the field, you know that the height of the tank can be, the higher the tank is, the more difficult it is to access through the top port. And because these are lower, it makes the ergonomically, accessing the tank and inspecting the tank much easier and much more comfortable. And then let's talk about manifolds for a second. So, our goal with NC is to have this fully non-corrosive solution. So you can, if you want to go that route, then we do have polyethylene manifolds available. That's kind of our standard. If you prefer metal manifolds, we also are, introducing part numbers with that. And you'll even see a picture in here where a customer bought components and then he bought stainless steel manifolds. So really the manifold choice is many. So I'd like to take a second now and we're going to just pause, just a brief pause. And if you can go to the chat box or to the poll window, Alyssa's gonna start a poll. So we'd really like to understand, when we do the webinars, kind of what type of people in the workplace are we trying to educate to? So, are you a grower? Are you a Netafim customer? Maybe a researcher? Are you with a magazine? Something like this. So I'm going to actually click it as well. And then I believe if we go to polls on your tab, you'll see kind of a running tally. So So I think we had roughly with the signups about close to 20 participants, and it looks like about half of them have answered the poll, so that's good. So I appreciate that. I know that Netafim appreciates that feedback. We want to try and do these, educational kind of 30-minute webinars as often as possible. So this really helps us. So thank you for that. Okay, I'm going to keep moving. So that was kind of features. Now applications. Again, the fact that it's non-corrosive gives it, a fair bit more application choices, I would say, right? So think about sand media, whether it's metal or non-corrosive. The first kind of bullet up here with primary filtration for surface water, rivers, streams, and canals that basically that have any kind of load of organic matter, sand, silt, or clay. That holds true whether it's metal or non-corrosive. Same with the second bullet of irrigating, very poor surface water quality. But where Sandstorm non-corrosive really stands out is I'll say the peace of mind of, if you need to be aggressive with your acid applications or your fertile applications through the media tanks, this really is the product of choice. Okay. And we will stand behind that 100%. And then also if you're close to coastlines, very salty air, high humidity locations, this again is the product of choice in terms of longevity. And then also we're kind of working parallel with our marketing teams and our R&D teams, and very soon, I would say within the next 60 days, we'll be providing a guide on how to deal with iron and manganese bacteria. So this will be part of that. So I just wanted to share that with you as well. So inside the Netafim marketing portal, or if you will, the website, we have a tremendous amount of support material that comes along with Sandstorm non-corrosive. So kind of unlike metal, because Sandstorm non-corrosive is, polyethylene inner layer, wrapped with fiberglass, and I'll mention this, the fiberglass strands are dipped. Basically, they run through the epoxy and the UV protection. The strands of fiberglass run through that before they're being wound, or during the winding process as they're manufacturing the product. So it's not like the older product that you might be familiar with, the old AGF that we used to use, where the paint was just painted on afterwards. The paint is actually kind of in a vat, if you will, and then the strands of fiberglass are run through the paint all the way through. So we've had some of the pictures I'll show you here shortly are systems that have been out in the field for 3 years, and they look like they were brand new off the shelf today. So with that, understand that there are some, they're not metal tanks, okay? So you're going to need to handle them a little bit differently when you're taking them off the truck. So we do have unloading instructions. There's a document on our website that shows that in the product section. So I'm just sharing that with you here, that there are unloading. I think it's a 3-page document. And then there's for installation, for the installation process and for the users afterwards, there's about a 26 or 28 page, user manual / installation manual as well. That's I find to be very thorough and very beneficial. There's also a separate technical guide or technical sheet, 2-pager. It'll summarize a fair amount of the information that we went through within the last 20 minutes, in terms of applications, specification, material, friction losses, part numbers, items like this. And then let me touch base on this too. So this picture on the left here is kind of a snapshot from our price list, okay? And you'll see in there, the configuration will say straight, T, or H. So we have done kind of the legwork up to this point to provide detailed drawings for straight configurations, and I'm saying CAD drawings, DWG files or PDFs of straight configurations, T configurations, H configurations. And if you're on the website and you look at the product section, you will see, below the download material, you will see all the different CAD files, and I have a couple of snapshots of that here in a few slides. So in addition to that, inside the price list, which you can get online, you'll see a detailed exploded view of all the parts and pieces, with the part numbers and the kind of the legend here. So this is the 36. This is similar, but for the 48-inch tank. And you'll notice, again, I'm going to go back here to the 36. The 36 is a little skinnier, right? And a little more upright. The 48-inch tank is a little more squatty, kind of as your traditional 48-inch metal would be. And here's a snapshot. The next two slides really are a snapshot of all the different configurations that we have in terms of the CAD details. So this is a 36-inch straight, the T 48-inch straight, and the different T systems, the different H configure systems. And I can share with you as well, we have just tremendous support globally with our filtration product manager and our resources. If there's a configuration that you have need for that's not on this long list, then we'd be more than happy to accommodate you. So for example, if you had a big system going in that you were replacing, a 16 tank H pattern metal media because it just is old, and you want to go to the kind of the next innovation in the market, and you wanted, a 16 tank NC, but you don't see the drawing here, then if as long as you communicate that that's what you'd like us to do, then we would, be more than willing and able to supply those drawings for you for something that's not on this list. Here's just a quick little spec sheet or spec table rather, in terms of kind of the important stuff, from an engineering point of view. So these tanks, this system, if I could highlight some important information, from my point of view, would be, we need to make sure that we have at least 29, 30 PSI available to backflush the filters. In other words, minimum backflush pressure is 29. And then, our maximum operating pressure is 87 PSI. And there's, I think, really only one other player in the market, which was, technology that's about 20 years old or so. The old AGF that we used to sell, I believe that tank is only rated at 80 PSI. And then it'll show you here, maximum flow rate per tank. But there should be an asterisk here. This really needs to be sized based off of water quality. If you had perfectly clean water, from a municipality, for example, what we're telling you is, if that was a scenario, you could run these maximum flow rates through it. But generally, as a friend of mine would tell me, if we have super clean water, do you really need a filter, right? So we really, again, focus on what's the application, what's the water quality, and then in our technical guides, we do have some recommendations on maximum flow rates for average water, poor water, very poor water, etc. Okay, and then, I've got just 4 or 5 slides of different installations we've done, and I think we'll open it up for some questions here shortly. So this is a 5-tank straight 48-inch. Here's a 6-tank teed configuration in a 48-inch. Here's a 4-tank 36-inch system on a T, looks like. And then here's another 6-tank system on a T. So that kind of concludes the major information for Sandstorm Non-Corrosive. And I think now, if there's any questions, then I'm going to go ahead into the Q&A section, and I'll be patiently observing my little chat box here and see what questions come up. There's got to be some questions. So there's one question, let's see, we received from social media is, when would you use sand media filtration versus disk filtration? Great question. So both filtration methods are considered to be depth filtration, disk filtration versus sand media filtration. The majority of the larger systems in the country that are high flow systems generally are sand media, and the reason being is they're when comparing the two with the same water source, and let's say aggressive like dirty water off of a canal, as an example, sand media filtration generally has performed at a higher level, in other words, a higher efficiency. I would say in the most harshest water, sand media filtration is the dominant filtration method in the market, period. Disk filtration does have its positives for sure, but in general, sand media is kind of, I don't want to say the most bulletproof filtration method, but it's much more forgiving than the other three types. sand separators, screen filtration or disc filtration. And again, it really is based off water quality. So I think what I can do now for maybe just a few minutes, let me touch on filtration in general, screen filters, disc filters, and sand media, and just share with you a little bit of thought process about, where does screens fit really well, where do discs fit really well, et cetera. And I think when you're talking about coarse material, for example, if you only have like heavy specific gravity material, for example, sand coming out of a well or that type of thing, screen filters do an amazing job at that. I mean, that's really kind of their sweet spot. If you're talking about organics and or inorganics, I believe, sand media or disc filtration, if sized properly, will do, very good jobs on those water sources. Let's talk about sand separation for a second. If you have high loads of sand particles, for example, a disc filter can take up to about 3 parts per million of coarse sand. And then anything higher than that, you really want to put a separator before that to handle that load. Otherwise, it'll just get overwhelmed and be back flushing all the time. With a screen filter, generally that number is between 5 to 7 parts per million of sand. Anything above that, again, you're probably going to want to put a separator before that. And then the number on the sand media is about 10 parts per million. So anything above 10 parts per million, generally you'd want to put a separator in front of that. So any other questions, comments, anything that you want to share? Julian, thank you for your comments. No worries on the questions. I appreciate it. Okay, well, having said that, I really appreciate everybody's participation, and continue to look through periodically through Netafim's website for upcoming webinars. I believe we have another one scheduled in October. And by the way, if you feel the need that you want to learn something on a topic, absolutely, contact us through the website, and we monitor, all that information daily. So we would love to hear from you and hear, what your needs are. So thank you again, and just wish everybody a good rest of the day and a good rest of this short week.